dharma. And
recording is on.
Yeah, we asked ourselves what is dharma, and then we asked what has been our dharma today, as on in terms of how our life is today. So we came up with these two fundamental definitions of dharma: dharayati iti dharma, dhriyate iti dharma. Dharayati, dharan karna is to take on, to stand for, to sustain, to uphold that which is sustaining or upholding, that is dharma. And dhriyate iti dharma, that which is sustained or upheld, is also dharma. So through a series of discussions, we sort of came up with a slightly more practical way of looking at it, in the sense the way of life which is being sustained, that we try to live, that we try to evolve, develop over a period of time, is a manifestation of what is the underlying vision, which is what sustains this way. So basically, the dharma can be seen in two perspectives. One is, what is the vision that we have towards life, and the other is, what is our lifestyle, how do we live our life today. All right, so one sustains the other, and then in turn, the way of life, our experiences that we gain through life, feed back into creating our vision. So this is a cyclical process, and therefore a look at our way of life can give an understanding of what we stand for. And that's something that we do all the time whenever we meet a new person. For example, we look at how that person conducts herself or himself, and then based on that, we get an idea of what they stand for, right, and who they are as a person, right. So this is something that we do all the time, right. So in that sense, how does this whole process take place, and in what way is this whole way of life, and with respect to the way of life and with respect to the vision of life, are we unique compared to various other living beings such as animals or plants? The uniqueness per se lies in the complexity with which we are able to perceive the context of a situation, our thought processes, our responses in terms of actions, and the complexity in consequences that we are able to create. Just since this last session was held the day after the World Environment Day, I sort of emphasize this in the sense that no other species has remotely come even remotely close to the kind of creating the consequences in terms of on nature or on the world or outer space or beyond, at least on this earth, right, as the human beings have. No other animal or plant species have had this extent, vast imprint, sort of the footprint that we have left or we are leaving, all right, is very, very complex. And of course, we are able to handle complex consequences as well. We may have created advertently or inadvertently a pandemic, and we are able to face it also. So I'm just using this as a small example. So we somehow lurch forward. So the complexity in all of this is very, very large compared to other species, and that is the manner in which our human design is unique. And how does this complexity come up? How does this whole response to stimulus and creating very complex societies and technologies and whatnot, which all have consequences, right? So how does this happen? If you look at what a little bit more about our design, okay, it all hinges on choice, right? So if you look at choice as a fulcrum around which we sort of build our life, we ask ourselves, how do we live life? Then this is how the whole thing comes. We make choices, and there are consequences for the choices, and then we hopefully make better choices. All right. But here is the deal: before choices come certain things. So there are thoughts. That is the fundamental starting point, so to speak. All right. There are thoughts in animals also. There are thoughts even in plants also. It's what scientists have, come up recognize. But these thoughts, then themselves are they are just momentary, and they keep going. They just they are there and they are not there. They are not there. There is a thought, and then it goes off. Another thought comes, replaces this thought, and so on and so forth. It just is a continuous flow like that. And oftentimes you see the disconnectedness of thoughts. For example, when you as I gave the example, when you are in like a crowded place, like a railway station or a bus stand, or in a mall, or whatever it is, you encounter so many things, and the thought can be stimulated through any of the sense organs. Somebody could just go past you and literally have a physical contact, just push you. There is a thought. There is a smell. There is a thought. There is a sound. There is a thought. There is a sight. There is a thought. There is a breeze. There is a thought. And there are so many ways. You eat something, there is a thought through the taste, right? So there are the source of stimulus for the thoughts could be manifold, but the thought does not necessarily have to sustain. You are able to immediately drop that and move on to the next, move on to the next, move on to the next. But when you hold a thought and then you start building on it, building on it through logical connected sequence, then you eventually create desires. Either you want something, you don't want something, you want to go towards something, you want to get away from something, or whatever it is. And that those desires are so build larger constructs. So if this is a subtle one which is not easy to perceive, a desire is easy enough to perceive. In fact, in some cases, when you see somebody, that somebody has a certain agenda in mind, a certain desire in mind that they are working towards, you can see that actually. It will be even visible in the way their expressions are there, the way they conduct themselves. This is much more, much less subtle, more gross, so to speak, in a sense that it is more tangible. And then there are plans of actions. These desires manifest as plans of action, and those actions, execution of plans, involves making choices at every step of the way, and that of course manifests as actions. Okay, and there are consequences. So this is our template. This is how we live life. Why I'm spending a couple of more minutes on this even now is because this is not going to change. This is independent of whether we live a life that is sustainable or unsustainable. This is independent of whether our life is founded in dharma or adharma. This is common for all human beings. This is the template. This is how we are wired. This is how we are made, right? And there are these fourfold personalities that sort of guide or underlie this process. There is the manas, which is a type of thought, which is where you ask, question, you analyze. Is this yes, no, maybe, not maybe, okay, to be, not to be, right? That is your manas. Buddhi is the deciding factor. Yes, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is how I am going to approach. So concluding, deciding aspect is buddhi. And to go from here to here, utilize, you fall back on the vast resources of memory, knowledge, experiences, our shastras say from even our past lives, which sort of frame our personality as we start with from the get-go. I mean, from an early stage of life, certain kids have certain desires, certain inclinations. Certain kids have certain other inclinations. So the imprints from the past, which are very subtle, which we may not even realize that they exist, but they are also part of our guiding forces. And of course, whatever knowledge you gain, studies. You give me an engineering problem, I'm going to approach it from the perspective of chemical engineering or process engineering, because that's what my training is. So that knowledge is going to sort of guide in going, asking the kind of questions that I ask, that taking the decisions that I take. Okay, so that also is very much a part of this chitta. And then of course the ahankara, the person who decides, the identity. Okay, I am the one playing this role in this context, in this situation. I am a professor, I am a teacher, I am a guide, I am a father, I am a mother, I am a brother, I am a friend, I am a, for some people hopefully nobody, but I don't know, maybe I am an enemy. There are roles. Whether I want to take those roles or not, those roles are there in every context. So that I, who is the underlying person who dons these various hats, right, and then goes about doing this business. So this is a template. This again, as I told you, this cannot change. This is how we are wired. This is how human beings have evolved into. All right. So using these templates, the question is what patterns, what habits, what lifestyle we create, and what is the vision underlying those patterns, habits, and lifestyles. And that is where the dharma comes in. So yes, choice is the fundamental game changer in evolution, and our ability to choose in a very complex manner and handle this whole process in a much more complex manner than other living beings have made us unique. All right. But the question is, for what am I going to exercise this choice? What am I standing for? If you therefore ask ourselves, the choices are determined by our vision of who we are, our vision of who others are, our vision of what the world is, our vision of what our needs are, and what the needs of the others are, and what value we assign to each of this. How much do I value who I am? How much do I value who the other person is? How much do I value what the world is? How much I value each of my needs? Which of my needs I can compromise, which of my needs I cannot. Same for others. I recognize and respect that others have their needs also, but how much do I respect it? How much do I value it? So all of these basically is, so to speak, the vision that governs the way we live our life, right? And then we seek to uphold or sustain that, all right? So if we ask ourselves, what is the underlying vision of our life, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the way in which we live life? And this is what we did in the last session. Without spending much time, I just want to point out that this was the basis for the so to speak, our vision of life. Historically, if you look at it, this is the vision that as a society, as the whole world, as humanity, we seem to have largely subscribed to, even though there are so many alternate visions that are there, that have been there from time immemorial. But today, our lifestyle, if you look at the kind of technologies that we are developing, for whom, for what, if we are looking at, just look at the defense technologies that are out there, all right? Look at the space technologies that are out there. What are they really guided by, all right? Look at the kind of medical research that has been happening, that has come out during this pandemic. Gain of function research, where you are talking about taking a virus, engineering it to be more infectious to a human being, so that you can find out what kind of medicines could work against such viruses. Such a virus doesn't even exist in the first place. You create it, and then you try to find a medicine for it, and then you say, if such a virus ever comes, I'll be ready for it. And neither do you have the medicine nor do you have the vaccine. The virus comes. So what are the thought processes guiding these kind of activities that humanity has largely, by and large, subscribed to? Whether we know it or not, our taxpayer money has gone into it. I mean, at least for the people who live in the US or in China or wherever, I don't know. India could have also contributed to it. That's what I heard last year. Nowadays, nobody seems to speak about that. They say that every country was contributing to it and all that. Anyways, so the point, however, is, the larger point is, what has become our dharma? Knowingly, unknowingly, dominion. And this comes up in our daily life. We objectify everything for our comfort. All of these are for our comfort, right? And we try to create lifestyles based on this, right? And this has ended up in a huge mess, which is highly unsustainable. And we looked at scattershot examples to sort of make this case. So I'm done with the recap, and I'm sort of getting into the question: if this lifestyle of dominion, seeking dominion, is unsustainable, what should our dharma be? How can we sustain humanity as an integral part of the universe? The question is, that is what has happened. Now we are at the brink of asking ourselves, the earth, nature will sustain herself. Mother Nature will find a way. But in that sustained nature, will humanity be a part or not? I mean, will we be there or will we be wiped out? That is the kind of question that we are facing today, largely due to our own activities. So how to sustain humanity as an integral part of the universe? What are the fundamentals that are non-negotiable, that we have to, no matter what, understand and see how to build off of those fundamentals? Where lies the solution? Um, this is just a quote that I saw from one of the greatest philosophers of all time, one of the greatest souls that ever lived on this earth, J. Krishnamurti. Right. This is just something that came just a couple of days ago, and here we are going to talk about this, and this thing comes up, and so we live in perpetual conflict because there is division between whoever. Wherever there is division, whether it is inward division or outward division, there must be conflict. Well, if you like to live in conflict, that's your affair. Have a good time, enjoy the fun of it and the pain of it too. But if you want to discover how to live peacefully, you must understand the basic fact that the explorer is exploring in oneself. Solution when we try to develop am I there, Ganesh? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but your screen goes on and off sometimes, so I'm not sure whether it's a bandwidth issue at my end.
Yeah, right now it
or
went off for me as well. But before this, I think it was fine.
Okay, so maybe some small internet issues at your end also, sir. Right now your screen is off, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, it's back on now. We can see your screen.
Yeah. If something happens, please let me know.
Okay, sure, sir.
Yeah, please ping me. I just have your WhatsApp on, so that if there is anything, I know that there is a disconnection. All right, sorry about that. So what I was saying was, if you want to live peacefully, we must understand the basic that the explorer is exploring in oneself. All right, whatever this technology that is being developed, it is all, we are all, it is in oneself. It is not outside of oneself. All right, the explorer is exploring its own structure, its own activities, its own movements of thoughts, its own memories. The explorer is all that. Look at the vision that is embedded in this statement, right? And how do we get this vision? I mean, it's very nice to hear. It's all very abstract, philosophical. Yeah, sounds okay, but how do we get this? It is a lived experience for someone like J. Krishnamurti. How do I make this a lived experience for myself? And that is the question. Because the moment I recognize this, some of the things that I do, I would never do. All right, it's like saying I'm going to take my lungs, and I'm going to just pump it with poison, and then I'll try to find a cure. And I won't do that. Today, I don't see that as me. And so it is some humanized mice, or it is some, I don't know, cell lines that are cultured outside. I mean, whatever the thought process is, I don't want to I don't want to get into the biology of it, the virology of it. I'm not just talking about the pandemic. Even, for example, the kind of deforestation that takes place. It's like saying I'll chop off my hand and use that for as a bat. Okay. Some of the thought processes will just not come. Right. So where do I get this vision? How do I get this vision? What are the fundamental pieces in place? Right. So this is the talk from which this quote comes. So the first thing we have to understand about life is that to live is to grow. All right. Stagnation leads to decay and death. You can see this around you in nature. If there is no life force, there is no growth. And if there is no growth, there is only decay and there is death. And part of the growth is a decay and death also, in the sense you drop something old and take on something new. All right. But that is part of growth. What I'm talking about as decay and death is an irreversible, permanent loss. All right. Where there is no more of a life force. Then it all goes back into the source. Right. And this growth for a human being is not physical. That is taken care of by nature. Remember the first shloka from Hitopadesha that we started this whole discussion with Aharam, Nidra, Bhayam, Maitunam cha Samanam etat pashvir naranaha. So Aharam, food, sleep, and insecurity or fear, and the desire for procreation, all of this is taken care of by nature so long as you survive. This is true for all animals and all human beings, all plants, everything. So therefore, if growth is not physical, it is at another plane. And that is to be expected, because what was the distinguishing feature? Where did the jump happen from animals and plants to human beings? It happened at the realm of choice. It happened at the realm of how do you do this? Thought to desire, to plan, to choice, to action, to consequences. That game changed. That means the factors that go into that process is what is the realm where the growth can be. Growth should be. Okay, and therefore the growth is emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. We will discuss what these are in one by one. So our ability to do this thing, choose, act, learn from the consequences, hopefully choose differently, offers us a field for this growth. And this is something that we have been using, and we have been using in a certain direction. Now the question is, we are trying to sort of turn inwards and ask ourselves, what has been what should have been the foundation on which we go through this process? That is the objective of today's discussion, really. So this ability is fairly limited in animals. It is fairly limited in the sense that it is limited to Aharam, Nidra, Bhayam, and Maitunam. Beyond that, at the realm of expanding the scope of this whole process, all right, expanding the frontiers of this whole process, and expanding it to the point where one species impacts on the other species, one being impacts on another being, and so on, and beyond and beyond. That is not there with animals. Very, very limited in animals. Whereas this is just the door is open for human beings, right? That's the difference. So seeking this level of growth, at the level of emotional growth, intellectual growth, and spiritual growth, this is our dharma. And in fact, if you ask ourselves, we have made huge intellectual strides, haven't we? As human beings, the kind of knowledge base that we have developed is enormous. Ask ourselves in terms of whether it is art or literature or in terms of any way of expression of emotions, the refinement that we have achieved is tremendous, without doubt. And the highest spiritual truths have been realized, lived again and again, and have been declared in so many forms, in so many ways, in so many languages and so many cultures, by so many people. And it is an unbroken continuum of that spiritual wisdom that has been shining forth. And we in Bharat, we in this country of India, we are eternally blessed to have been in a place where this wisdom has shone forth brighter than almost anywhere else, one should say. All right. And therefore, this is all there. This growth has happened. I'm not saying it has not happened. But all of this, especially the emotional growth and the intellectual growth, towards what? Right? That is the problem. Right? So still that vision is not set in place yet. Right? So how is, therefore, the question that we have to ask is, how is this growth that we are seeking different from rational scientific progress? So that part of it has to be asked. And oftentimes you hear this, especially in a place like Amrita, that, spiritual growth cannot be, taken out or removed from the equation of emotional intellectual growth. These have to go hand in hand. You can't separate one from the other, and this is as important, as integral a part of our growth. Otherwise, this growth can go in unsustainable directions. This is something that you keep hearing, and that is the primary difference between what traditionally has been called as rational scientific progress and what we are talking about, and that we will see shortly. But let's ask ourselves, try and understand what are emotions, what are the type of emotions, and what is the basis of emotions. All right, so I have put these terms. These are called navarasas in 9 different forms of emotions in tradition. All right. So one is Shringaram, Veeram, Karunam, Hasyam, Bhibatsam, Bhayanakam, Adbhutam, Raudram, and Shantam. So what are these? I'll not spend much time on this. Shringaram is the essential happiness, the sort of joy that comes in sharing, being together with whoever, your friends, your mother, your father, your child, your friend, your best half, better half, right? So it goes all across, all right? It's not just romantic love. That is one big part of it, but it's not the only part by any ways. Veeram is bravery, courage. Karunam is it is not actually compassion per se. It is actually sorrow. The way it is depicted, at least in Natya Shastra, Karunam is depicted as sorrow and pain. All right, and let us not get into too much of the details of why that word Karunam has been used for sorrow and pain. That requires a separate line of discussion. I don't think we'll have the time for it. Hasyam is making jokes, having fun in terms of sarcasm. All of those kind of comedy comes into that. Bhibatsam is disgust. Okay, so whatever you want to run away from, whatever you can't stand the thought of, is expressed as Bhibatsam. Bhayanakam is fear. Adbhutam is surprise. Right? Adbhutam is wow. This is great. This is amazing. Wow. So that sort of a surprise is Adbhutam. Raudram is anger. And Shantam is a calmness, a stillness, where all of these have sort of balanced themselves. All these emotions have balanced themselves. And that sort of leads to the sort of basis of emotions. Irrespective of whether you live a life that is sustainable or unsustainable, doesn't matter. This is always the basis. Love and compassion are the basis of our fundamental experience expressions. Amma always talks about this. It could be selfish love, it could be selfless love, it could be love for yourself. That's all I care for. I just want myself to grow as a person. I just want myself to achieve this, myself to achieve that. I don't want to think of anybody. I don't think twice about stepping on somebody and crushing them if that's what I have to do. Seize the moment, and it could be something as selfish as that, or it could be very, very selfless. You can display bravery in a very selfless manner. Your heart can break for somebody else's pain, or it can break for your selfish desire having not met. You can express disgust at something that is very adharmic at a fundamental level across for the entire universe, or it could be basically because that person has something I want and I cannot get it, so I hate that person. All right, and so on and so forth. So it could all be compassion for oneself alone, or it could be compassion for the whole world. So core of Amma's teaching, if you look at it, if it all in terms of practical manifestation, it all comes to expanding all of these for the whole universe, and thereby seeking growth. And one growth cannot be divorced from the other. When you do this, you have to fundamentally seek intellectual growth also, spiritual growth also. It's not like they are all compartments, silos. It doesn't work that way. So if you ask intelligence and its basis, if you so there is so many levels at which you look at intelligence. One is information, the other is knowledge. You sort of put together this information, you are able to remember and understand what information you get, process and understand, and then you are able to apply it in a specific context. You analyze the outcomes of whatever your applications are. You evaluate your choices in your application, and then you create new knowledge, so to speak. So this is by the way, those of you who are in academia, you will recognize this immediately as what is called Bloom's taxonomy, different levels of knowledge. All right, and so information feeds into this, and then you build. Then the third one is, of course, wisdom. Now, this is completely different from knowledge or information. This is when the whole intelligence becomes lived, if I may use the term. It manifests in the way we express ourselves, in the way we conduct our life. It is one thing for us to say that there is virus, corona, we have to mask ourselves and whatnot. And when we mask, when we go out, we all wear double mask, and then we go out and go to buy to buy vegetables or whatever. And then you may go through 100 people's houses. In the road that passes through the 100 houses, you may use to cross to go to the shop and buy whatever you want to buy. But when you come out to want to say something to your neighbor, you somehow have this understanding that there is no corona in my front yard. So what you will do, you will not wear mask. You will just come out, and then you will be chatting for half an hour, 45 minutes with your neighbor. Okay. But through the same road, somebody from 4 streets away, when he is crossing your house to go buy vegetables, he will wear double mask and go. For him, that coronavirus can be there in front of your house, but for you it is not there, because it's your house, right? So there is knowledge, but that doesn't mean it is translated. It doesn't mean it is a lived experience. You understand? So that wisdom is something else entirely. It comes with to translate from knowledge to wisdom, you need a certain acceptance. All right, and you need to be able to drop preconditions. And how do you do that? You do that by recognizing something fundamentally. All right, I am sorry, this is in Tamil. I will read this, at least the first line alone. கற்றது கைமண் அளவு, கல்லாதது உலகளவு என்று உற்ற கலைமடந்தை ஓதுகிறாள். So the great Saraswati, she declares that கற்றது கைமண் அளவு, whatever I have learned is, ek haath ka mitti, you just take sand in one hand, how much there is, that much only you know. Kalladadu, what you have not learned, is ulagalavu. Ulagam means the world. It's as much as the world. So what you know is so little, and what you don't know is so much. And that is the basis, because the moment you pause and ask yourself, there is, any instrument has its limitations, and at the end of the day, the thoughts to desires to plans of action, to choices, to consequences, this happens on a limited level. It may be a game changer compared to an animal, but it still is limited. The manas is limited in its scope, buddhi is limited in its scope, chitta is limited in its scope, and the ahankara is also limited in its scope. All right. That was something that we saw in the last session. In that movie, the quote, the scene from the movie with honors. The president isn't an elected king, no matter how many bombs he may drop, because the crude constitution doesn't trust him. And this is the president of the United States, who in principle can annihilate the entire world through nuclear warfare. Right? So that is there. So there is a limitation. And when in practice, when we execute our choices, are we aware of this? Oftentimes not. Oftentimes our blinders take over, our preconditioning takes over. And that's why it's my house, therefore I walk out without a mask. If it is, till the compound wall, it is my house, right? I just walk out in the open, and the next compound wall, it is my neighbor. So we chat for 1 hour without wearing a mask. Okay. So that's just a small example. The same fellow goes 4 streets down the line for a shop, he'll wear a mask and go. Okay. So this is how the just a small example in which, for this wisdom to blossom, what we need is a certain recognition of fundamental limitation of this whole tool that we have. Okay. And that is why I brought out this example. What we know is but a handful, but what we don't know is as big as the world. So we have to, then only you can ask this question. Just because I can, should I? Just because I can build this huge dam, and then dam all the water, and then dam the people who are living there. All right. Should I? We are not able to perceive consequences. See, that is the idea of the intelligence, isn't it? You must be able to perceive consequences. And we are not, very clearly we are not. If you look at our lifestyle, we have not been able to really perceive consequences until it is too late. Okay. So that is why I emphasized on that basis of the intelligence has to be that you have to recognize that the intelligence that you have is limited. Okay. So then you ask yourself what I need versus what I want. So then I ask myself, just because my thoughts, I just ran with a set of thoughts and formed a desire, does it mean I really need it? Okay. So does it mean that I really, really need this? Then I'll be able to ask myself, what are we taking as necessities today? What are luxuries? If you ask 20 years ago, what were luxuries? Today they are necessities. You cannot imagine living a life without them. Can you imagine living a life without a fan or a tube light or an air conditioning or any kind of these electricity at all? Some 40, 50 years ago, a fan was a luxury. And people lived. It was not like it wasn't hot. It was not like it wasn't cold. It was not like it wasn't sultry or whatever. Today, it is a necessity. What is the cost? What is the consequence of it? What is the price that we are paying? What are the impacts that we are creating? Nobody ever asks any question. I mean, my friends keep telling me, why don't you put an air conditioner in your house? I said, to put an AC unit in Coimbatore is a crime. This place is like right under Nilgiris, Western Ghats. It is cold enough. I mean, it's not so hot. But I have to have a fan in every room in my house. I have to include myself in this list. Everybody is included in this list. What is the necessity? What is the luxury? Can we convert our instead of making every want into a need, can we convert as many needs as possible into wants? Instead of converting all luxuries into necessities, can we convert as many of our necessities as possible into luxury? I'm not saying we should give up everything and then live like one, it's not like I'm trying to distribute poverty and suffering all around. That's not the idea. There are certain principles of society, social isms. I'm not saying it is socialism, it's some kind of isms, all right, where basically the idea is, there isn't enough for everybody, so let everybody suffer. All right, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not the kind of thing. It is based on a completely different level of recognition of the limitation of my thought process, the whole process of thoughts to actions to consequences and so on and so forth, right? So then I ask myself, just because I say I need this, I desperately need this, do I really need this? This is a necessity without which I can't live. Is it really true? So in any situation, this is a practical way in which you can recognize this limitation. We always say, you know what, I don't need this fate. I'm in control of my life. Or there are other people who say, well, everything is a fate. It's all predetermined. You really don't have much of a choice. What choice are you talking about? So, my understanding out of practical experiences has been this. If you take any situation, let's take a very simple example of you trying to cross a road. These days, it's supposedly easy because it's all locked down, but you should go out and see, then you will realize how difficult it is, just how much traffic there is. Everybody thinks there is no traffic and they're just driving, right? So it's simple act of crossing a road. You can choose as judiciously as you want, but you cannot sit in the brains of 100 other people who are on the road and make choices for them. Despite all the best intentions, accidents do happen, and they happen at alarming regularities. So what can happen? Swami Dayanand Ji used to say this very nicely. So you cross a road. There are the following that can happen. One is you end up crossing the road. Second is that there is so much traffic that you are stuck on this side, you cannot cross the road. Third is that you try to cross the road and then you wake up in a hospital 5 days later, your leg is up, arm is down, and you are asking fundamental questions. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Anything can happen. This is the reality. So in any situation, choice is only one part of the consequence. There is always a context of that situation, of which we may have had some control. If you go and sit with our masters, they will tell you your actions determine your consequences. Therefore, you have done something in the past which is leading to these consequences, and just that you are not able to perceive the connection between how from your choice or your action to this consequence. What is the link between these two? You may not be able to perceive, but that is how it is. Your past action has led to this consequence, this situation. Very well, maybe, but at this point, I don't have a choice over it. It is something that I have to accept. So there is always a part which is basically based on a context that is completely outside my hands that I have to accept. The only thing is whether I accept it gracefully, quickly, wisely, to use that word wisdom. All right, either I am wise or I am otherwise. That's all. Or I accept it kicking and screaming. I try to resist. Context is not going to change. I still remember this context in my life. Life never stops. My father had passed away 3 years ago, and his mortal remains were in one room, and in the next room my mother was sitting, and she is an epileptic patient. She had to take her medicines, and to take her medicines she had to eat something. She had been with this person for 45 plus years, 46 years, and he's gone, and I had to feed her idli. The next room, his mortal remains are there. It was such an experience that life doesn't stop. You have to accept it. You have to move on. You have to keep doing what you have to do. Context is what it is. So then, intelligence in dealing with that context, in dealing with any situation, is first in accepting it. Then you can make an intelligent choice. You can make a wise choice, right? So fate and choice is essentially, therefore, are to me two sides of the same coin in any given situation. Every moment after moment after moment, we are thrown contexts. We have to choose. All right. Within that context, if we can understand the limits of the freedom and choice, just what choice do we really have? If we understand that, then we can narrow down to the basis of intelligence. Just as love and compassion are the fundamental basis of emotions, humility and acceptance, and if I may put one more word out there without really talking much about it, surrender, are the basis of intelligence. The last thing is spirit. And here I have quoted the great Adi Shankara's Nirvana Shatakam or Atma Shatakam, right? Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham, nacha shrotra jihve, nacha grana netre, nacha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayus chidananda rupa shivoham shivo. I am not the manas, I am not the buddhi, I am not the ahankara, I am not the chitta. Nacha shrotra jihve, nacha grana netre. So it is, I am none of the sense organs, the ones that cause hearing or taste or sight or all, none of the sense organs. Nacha vyoma bhumi, na tejo na vayu, not any of the elements. I am not the fire, the earth, the space, the air, the water. Chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham. I am Chita Ananda Rupaha. What is this? What is this basis? What is the declaration? Okay. So if we ask ourselves what life is a manifestation of ever existing, ever conscious, ever effulgent divinity. And it manifests effortlessly. And that's something that I want to really, emphasize. You look at a great Mahatma like Amma, what is so astounding about it? She is the personification of divinity. It is her effortlessness. That is what is most astounding if you ask yourself. More than anything else, she does so many things. She may have her body, God knows how it handles everything. That's all maybe there. All right. And the kind of connection she has with the millions of people, it may be hundreds of things. But ultimately the divinity is effortless. And it manifests in infinite, manifold ways in all beings in the universe. That is life, right? That is, it finds a way to sustain itself. Whether it is in a unicellular organism like a virus, a SARS-CoV-2, it is also trying to sustain itself. It is undergoing whatever mutation it has to undergo in infinite, manifold ways. It sustains itself. It's its expression. It has every basis for it to do it. And so is the case with us, right? The life force in you is different from all the tools, all these tools, manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, all the sense organs and all the world that you see around. This is fundamental. This is always there. Can you ask when life began? Is there a point in time when you can say that there was no life? Can you ask, is that life confined to one place? As a tiny little cell which is smaller than the breadth of your hair is now all pervasive. Here you are. All right. It doesn't matter which form through which that life expresses itself, whether it is this form or the form of you people, the listeners, or it is the form of the medium through which this life is getting expressed. Why is the big deal about artificial intelligence? It is just that you are refining that medium to a point where some form of life can express through it. Intelligence can express through it. You are creating that, right? It doesn't matter what form it is. beyond that, there is a fundamental life force. And we have to recognize that. And that fundamental form is divine, because it is the source, it is the origin of universe. It is Shiva. Why is it called? Why Shiva? All right. It is the ultimate source of auspiciousness. Sham karoti iti Shivaha. What is Sham? Sham in Sanskrit literally means Mangalam, Kalyanam. It literally means auspiciousness. It also means Laya. In Srishti Sthiti Laya, Shiva is supposed to be the master of Laya. Laya is rhythm and balance. There we come to the source of Dharma. Okay. So I don't want to take too much time. I have already taken a lot of time. Now, therefore, if we are asking ourselves to sort of go forward, the first crux of the basis of a dharmic life, if you ask ourselves, strip all the details, all the shastras, put it all down, and then bottom line what it is. I am seeking emotional, intellectual, and spiritual growth. And this is grounded in nurturing balance and auspiciousness, not just within, but everywhere. Because that life force is everywhere, and it seeks balance everywhere. It seeks auspiciousness everywhere. Not at the cost of one for the other. Founded in humility, surrender, acceptance, expressed through love and compassion. These have to be the basis. This has to be this is the sustainable way of life. Cognizant that all beings are also seeking similar. And so we have a part in enabling each other's growth. You talk about teamwork, it is not just in your office. It's not just at home. It is universe. Accepting of limitations in freedom and choice. Even while recognizing the life spirit within is always limitless. Freedom and choice is for what? It is for the tool. It is for that bloody expression of a choice, all right, of a thought process, of a manas or a buddhi. It is the life that is within is beyond that. It is far beyond that. It is the same life force that is expressing through this virus, mutating itself across the globe. And therein lies the hope. Therein lies the way. Surrendering the ahankara to the divine. So it is not in establishing this identity where there is growth. The identity of Murli Rangarajan is not the growth. Right? It is in sustaining the life spirit where the growth is. And that is far beyond this identity anyways. And then when you do this, you are able to revel in the effortless manifestation of the divine. You see, she's sitting there effortlessly. She's just in bliss. This is the fundamental basis of Dharma. And this is how life can become sustainable. There is no other way that compromises these. Now, keeping this as the foundation in our own life, each of us has to find our ways. All right, and that is a separate discussion, separate set of discussions actually, if you think of it. How to build, in one aspect versus another aspect, in terms of actions, in terms of what values we have behind our actions, in terms of how to manage desires, how to manage so many things. All right, we can talk more and more and more. There is a lot that can be talked about. But this is the foundation, right, with which one can fully engage with life, utilizing all the physical tools, emotional tools, intellectual tools for something far beyond just the tool. This is how we can sustain life within and everywhere. And now is the time, all right? And I'm a beautiful quote from Savitri. That hour had fallen on Savitri. A point where she reached, where life must be in vain, or either that or in her unborn element awake. Her will must cancel her body's destiny. For only the unborn spirit's timeless power can lift the yoke imposed by birth in time. And this is the personality, manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, that is birthed in time. You want to transcend this? You have to transcend it by going to the unborn spirit's timeless power. And that can happen through these tools, through this birth in time, by turning to the fundamentals of each of the emotions, of the intellect, of the spirit. So I think it's time for me to actually stop. It's just too much otherwise. It's already 11:50. There are a few more slides. It's just some. I mean, maybe I'll just skip some of these things. I'll probably one is as good as any. So these are all some nice messages to sort of stop. Am I sharing the screen?
Right now, no, sir.
Okay. I just took off the share screen thingy. I suppose I was afraid I did that. Yeah.
No, we can take questions also, because there's already a question from Radhika in the chat box that I see.
Yeah, this is the thing that I'll leave this, and I'll be very happy to take questions.
So there is already one question from Radhika in the chat box. If you can just.
Yes, let me go to the chat box.
And similarly, others also, in case you have questions, you can either unmute yourself and ask, or you could type them in the chat box.
When you say surrender is also one of the pillars on which intelligence is based, do you mean we relinquish our ego? Or surrender our likes and dislikes, and this surrender will let us access higher intelligence? Both are the same. At some level, they appear different, but both are the same. So our likes and dislikes are based on our limited chitta, our limited experience. We always hear this, right? Even in very common parlance, we hear this: step outside your comfort zone. What is that supposed to mean? Don't be confined by your likes and dislikes, your limited understanding. There is a whole world out there. Just get out and explore. And this, stepping outside the comfort zone in a big way is actually relinquishing our ego. The so-called realization of the spiritual realization is the ultimate jump, ultimate stepping out of the comfort zone in some sense, if you want to look at it. So it is, yes, I agree with you on this totally. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I will show you some of the practical points also. It's just that let's first take some questions. Ganesh, yes.
Yes, there is a fundamental question which is related to your earlier talk also, where you spoke about dominion has become our dominant dharma today. So the thing is, in today's society, we live amidst a large section of people who believe that dominion is their dharma, which has a lot of, as you said, anthropocentric roots or cultural roots or even religious roots in certain cases.
Yes.
And you have one section of society which has dharma as their foundational base of their civilization itself.
Yes.
If I want to put it in a very blunt way, it's like the Eastern civilization versus the Western civilization. So
yes, but even there,
even there, they had some civilizations which were founded on dharma, but they are more or less relinquished today.
Yes.
So how do you strike a balance? Because you say love and compassion has to be the foundation of our lives. How do you be loving and compassionate to someone who is hell bent on eliminating you?
I mean, this question was, how do you, for example, this is a question that people have asked: how do you be compassionate and loving to Adolf Hitler, for example? Right? for example, right, that fellow is, especially if you're a Jew or a gypsy or I don't know, he was hell bent on destroying all of you, right? So then how do you show compassion and love to that person? The way to show compassion and love to that person is by standing up to that person, and you have to use every tools necessary. Nobody is saying that you should relinquish war or you should relinquish battle, whether at the intellectual realm or at the physical realm. Nobody is saying that. In fact, if you ask yourself, this same teaching of love and compassion was given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, and he asked Arjuna, Tasmad Yuddhasva Bharata, go fight, kill all those fellows. That's what he said. So that is the point. The love and compassion is the basis for all 9 rasas, not just for all being goody gooey things. But the point is on for what are you standing up for? So if it is Raudram for my selfish desire, then no. I remember this wonderful example. I'll just give you this example. This is a miracle, and therefore, there may be people amongst you who may not be able to believe it. But this actually happened because I've known it. I'll not name names. There was one great Mahatma who had this devotee who got married. The girl got married to a guy. Okay. And this guy, I don't know what conflicts were inside his mind. Today, if you look at him, he's such a gem of a guy. You will just fall at that fellow's feet. All right. But at that time, he was a very conflicted person. And he used to pick quarrels with his wife for no reason and literally beat her. And this girl was in some other country. She was in a different country than her parents, and she was suffering. She was just keeping it all inside herself and suffering. Okay. And one day her father came to know about what had been happening, and then he went to a great sage, the great Mahatma that this person was, this father was devoted to, and just poured it all out, and then started crying, breaking down, and he said, what did my daughter do? Why is she going through this? This is not correct. This is not fair at all. And that Mahatma, he heard all of this and got so angry and just stood up, and he declared, from now on, that man will never raise his hand against your daughter. He will apologize for everything he has done. Just one word that was said. What was happening was that this guy was in his office at that time, and the girl was at home. Morning, as usual, some quarrel had happened. And this, I don't know what, that man was possessed with something in his office. He just could not work anymore. He was just crying. He just took a cab. He came home. He fell straight at his wife's feet and said, I'm very, very sorry for what I've done. I'll never do this again. And that was the end of it. And it has been a decade and a half now. Nothing like that has ever happened. It's an extreme dramatic example that I'm talking about. But Raudram, that anger and the sankalpa that comes out of that anger can be so powerful. So powerful. And it really is possible. Yeah, in our own way, it is possible. It may not be, it's not like if I stand up to Adolf Hitler and say, you will stop doing all of this or you will get destroyed. It doesn't mean Adolf Hitler is going to drop down dead. All right, that's not the point I'm trying to make. But it is possible and it has to be done. There is no choice there. I hope I have answered your question.
To some extent. Anyways, I would like others also to pose their questions.
Yes. Couple of people have said, sir, we would really like to see those practical points. I will show you that. After we do the questions, we'll just quickly run through. May not be able to spend a whole lot of time.
So my audio actually, I dropped off from the presentation in between. Thank you for answering my question. This is Radhika this side. I just had a further question after what you said. Um, how do we choose between the choices that we have? Like, how do we know that our intellect or our discrimination is guiding us towards the right choice? Like, how do we know this is the dharmic choice, or this is an idea I should pursue and this is something that I need to discard?
Okay, very, very, very nice question. Thank you for asking that. One of the consequences of our understanding the limitations of our intelligence is to seek guidance, isn't it? And that's something that is always said. It is intelligent to seek help if you need help and help is around. Okay, and it's not just a question of in these kind of choices. Even in a very practical situation, it is intelligence. It sort of makes things more efficient, makes things more much smoother, right? And that doesn't, by the way, for the students out there to say that I'm writing an exam, I really need an answer and there is help around because there are lots of people around, I just ask, well, sorry, that's a different situation altogether. But you should not take license that way. But coming back to the point, there are different levels at which this thing can be done. First thing is to understand that there is a natural mechanism that is in place where, if we made a wrong choice, we will learn from it. There will be a consequence, we can learn from it. And oftentimes the biggest thing is because we are not able to accept the context of a situation, we don't learn the lesson, right? Always lessons are taken in such a painful, such a dramatic, such a very deeply personal manner. Personal as in it is a personal thing because you have to change, all right, but it is it is seen as an affront to our identity, and it is, isn't it? It is to shape that identity that lesson comes, right? So there is a natural feedback mechanism that is there, but that is not necessarily the fastest mechanism. So that is what I'm trying to point out. When there is help around, it is intelligent to seek. That is why there are great Mahatmas, right? That is why they are guiding us on an individual basis. They are guiding us, and it is intelligent to seek help, and there is absolutely nothing wrong in that at all. Going and taking their guidance, and they have seen the end of this process. They have seen, for them, this life that is based on compassion and love, and the manifestation of that life freely, effortlessly through them is a lived experience, right? So they know how to take us through. They know how to accelerate this evolution. There is absolutely nothing wrong in taking that time. I mean, nothing wrong is a gross understatement, I would say. It is intelligent to take that help. And so in the process, if we go through the feedback mechanisms, rather painful at times, it is fine. It is what it is. When we accept that situation, then 100 things open up. You will find that same, for them it is effortless, right? Why should, I have always asked this question, why do I expect that my guru has to come in that physical form and has to communicate to me directly? It doesn't have to be. For them it is effortless. They can teach me through anything, and that's our shastras also talk about, that this famous Dattatreya's learning. I learned this from the pond, from the fish, from the crane, from this, from that, from Akasha, from everything he learned, and then by the time he reached his guru, he was already liberated, right? So that it opens up in a big way.
Okay.
I hope I have answered that.
That
I'm
makes
sorry,
a
it's
lot
not
of
a very
sense.
straightforward answer, but life is a complex thing, so it's a
No,
process. And
thank
that's the
you.
other thing that's important for us to recognize, that this evolution is a process. It's an ongoing process. It's not an outcome. It's not something, we should treat it like that. Of course, I want this now, here, but it's a process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think to be able to absorb these lessons, I mean, from so far I've realized just having like a childlike attitude, like is the easiest way to not get offended.
Exactly. See, child innocently surrenders, na?
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
will have no hesitation in exercising its choice. At the same time, it will have absolutely equally no hesitation at all in giving up its choice and surrendering. That's exactly the point.
Hmm.
The tool is there, but one has to be able to recognize its limitations and surrender.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anytime. Yeah. Any other questions?
So would you like to take an example? Means I don't know how many of them got the point. Maybe any real life situation in your own life which could stress this point.
Which point?
The question which Radhika asked just now. How do you make the right choice? Because your intellect or your intelligence also can kind of betray you
See,
at times.
it does all the time. I mean, I don't even know if I've made right choices or not. See, looking back, how am I to judge that? Only somebody who's liberated can judge that. So, I mean, I am also a journeyman like all of us, right? I mean, we are all walking this path and trying to figure out things. That's all. So, in that sense, yes, the one thing, one fundamental marker, I would say, for us recognizing we are making right choices is that we will be grateful for what has happened in our life. Whether it is good or bad or right or wrong or whatever it is, we'll be grateful because it has only helped us. There is this saying that comes that people say in English, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it is true. And we'll be grateful for what has happened, and there is that natural gratitude to the divine. When that starts taking hold, then you are making the right choices. At least those choices, whether right or wrong, are leading you in the right direction. That much at least you can get a confirmation.
Sir, if I may add something to this, I
Yes,
mean,
please.
the thing is, okay. So you had mentioned about Rahul, the intent behind the action itself. So, for example, at every point we have to assess the impact of our actions or actions to be, or the ones that we intend to take. So, if they are more to do with my likes and dislikes or my selfish needs, then I should probably introspect and see, okay, do I really need this? Is it, I mean, am I better off without this because somebody else is going to be negatively impacted? So I'd rather stay away from this.
Mm.
And that at every point, this kind of contemplation, this mananam, might probably help us make wiser, better choices for ourselves and also help others in some way, is what I
True,
think.
true, absolutely true. To the extent that you can exercise your tools of, manas buddhi, right?
Manas,
Chitta, right?
Chitta,
You have
yeah.
to. That is given to you, right? That famous story of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's disciple saying that there is divine in everything, and therefore there is that wild elephant that is coming. It also is divine. Then Ramakrishna tells you the
Yeah.
fellow who was there standing next to you and say run away was also divine. He was also telling you to run away. Why didn't you run away? Why did you let the
Exactly.
elephant take you and throw you? Right?
True.
The same way, the tools are given to you. You have to use them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, and sir, another thing is, I mean, like, while you brought it out really well, I think that one point which was probably not mentioned even earlier was that dharma is extremely subjective, unlike law, which is very objective. So, for instance, in two cases in which, say, if one person uh, says a lie, it might be dharma in one case, and another instance it might be adharma. So it depends on a case by case. We have to take it on a case by case basis, and there is no one size fits all dharma per se. So we have to.
I agree with you 100%. We really never got into the practical aspects of dharma at all, right? Whether it was the earlier session or this session. I mean,
Right.
really, if we have to say dharmic life, from what basis is that dharmic life going to come?
Yeah.
That is all we have really touched upon. Now we have to get into the nitty gritties of, how do I face each situation? That's why I said I have to kind of draw a line here and stop. But you are 100% right. And so when you get into, the practicalities of dharma, there are some dharmas that are universal, that
Right. Of course. Of course.
cannot be compromised, and there are some dharmas that are subjective, And therefore you can say, when on the one hand, like you said, the satyam vada is say, speak the truth is a dharma, but in a context,
In a context,
of hitam for the other person, hitam vada, all right, so you may have to tell a lie. What can be done? We have had to do that quite a few times, especially during this pandemic. Entire families are hospitalized. We have to tell one fellow, don't worry, everybody is all right, you get well, don't worry. We have to tell the lie. What to do? So it is practical.
That need not be a lie, though. I mean, we don't need to associate everything with a lie or the truth.
I mean, the other fellow, sorry to say, in this case, the other fellow is in ventilator and is about to pass away. But point, what to do? You have to say what you have to say. You don't want this fellow also going into the ventilator.
Right.
So
I think for all these reasons, therefore, it's always best to take help from a self-realized master, because they know things which we have absolutely no idea about. So it's always good, whenever in doubt, best to always go to the master.
But at the same time, they will be ready for them to say, you have the tools, you have not used it, go and struggle.
Yeah.
Be ready for that also.
Of course, yeah.
So it is, again, as you say, as we brought out, it's a process, right? It's an iterative process, and we can only pray and hope that we are going in the right direction, and sincerely put in effort for it, and that's enough. Then the Guru will take care of everything and lift us. See, at one level, since quite a few of us here are are at least very strongly associated with some guru or some self-realized master with whom we have a very close association, I can boldly say this. What is the role of a guru? What is the job of a guru? The job of a guru, as a guru, andhakara nirodhitvat guru vitya vidiyate. So to eliminate darkness and take us to light, which means essentially to liberate us. All right. And you have a tremendous faith in that person, that great Mahatma, that person is so great and all that. So, you have to then be 100% confident that person can do his or her job. And her job is to liberate you. The question is, are you cooperating? The question is, are you making this smoother? Or are you going to make this horrible? The question never is whether it will happen or not. I don't know if you realize this. So is it going to happen in this birth or 100 births? They have all the time. They are beyond time. We are the one who is in a hurry. We are the one who has all the problems. For them, it will always be effortless. How much ever you struggle, it will be effortless to create the next context for us to learn from. And the process is iterative. The evolution is iterative. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's why I said it's intelligent on our part to take that help. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. I'm laughing.
Any more questions? I have one. It's a very generic question I have. It's like, how do you draw the balance between dharma and development? Development as we see today in today's context. I mean,
it's thanks for asking that question, because we did talk a lot about technology, and that was one thing I felt I had not touched upon in closing the loop. So thanks for asking that question. Any scientific exploration, as we sort of discussed in the last session, at least at this point, most of the scientific exploration doesn't seem to be grounded in asking ourselves, do I really need this? Is this necessary? Is this sustainable or not? I mean, not only we are starting to ask preliminary questions, I would say. I wouldn't say we have gone very far in terms of sustainability, but at least there is a consciousness that is coming in the scientific community. So it is a process that I have hopes and faith in the whole design, the way we are designed. We will find that way of finding what technological choices are sustainable, what technological choices are not sustainable, and what development, social development or economic development. But then again, we also are equally strongly pulled by selfish vested interests and our narrow definitions of what we want, and that also we see conflicting with the larger, so this is going to be a struggle, if you ask myself. But how do we balance the both? Again, it is context specific, right? So for each problem, you have to ask yourself, each scientific question that you are addressing, you have to ask yourself, what is the line to draw? Where do you not cross? It has to be context specific. I'm not able to sort of, take, for example, gain of function research in terms of our pandemic corona research. I'm not sure the vaccines that got developed were because of the gain of function research. So I don't see any reason why such a research should continue. The risks are far, far higher, greater than any reward that may come out. So there are, specifically, we'll have to address them. Yes.
Okay, maybe I can give a simple context. Maybe one is the growth of the fertilizer industry, for example, because fertilizer industry was not something which, what you say, sprang up when industrial revolution first took place. It was a later invention, kind of.
Yes.
And that has had a major impact on what we cultivate, how we cultivate, and what we are consuming.
Yes.
And as an engineer, I myself, I might have gone to several fertilizer companies, and being a control systems engineer, I might have commissioned some automation system for them. Now, when I look back at what I did in the past, I somehow feel that whether maybe I did it for my stomach, I did it because I wanted to earn an income. But then, since that association, I have been associated with an act or with an institution which is probably adharmic in retrospect now.
Okay.
So how do you because the more and more you become subtle, and because whatever you said, when you think and you make choices, you're becoming subtler and subtler. And somehow, I don't know, I personally am at a juncture where I'm not able to decide whether these are good. Maybe I'll never go back to that kind of a life, but in the larger run, what is the solution like? Because agriculture is going worse and worse, and things are not it's not improving anyway. We have destroyed our soil culture.
But see, now the question has this specific context. I believe the question has to be looked.
So we lost your audio.
As we know, it has evolved in a big way. Take for example, Indians, we eat rice and wheat in a big way these days. Neither of which was originally our staple diet. Okay, and when they were introduced into our staple, they were fantastic options, primarily, particularly rice, because we had so much of water. All right, and now we don't. Now water is a disaster. So we are getting canned water. It is colorless, tasteless, odorless. That's all we know. God only knows what is there inside it. I mean, it can carry all kinds of poison. That's the reality of it. And a large amount of poisoning of the groundwater and even the surface water has been due to agricultural activities also. So there is no doubt about it. Okay, so the question therefore is, we have to, either we ask ourselves globally, can we change our diet patterns? That is a slower process. That's going to take a longer time. And in the meanwhile, then can we then go back to at least farming practices that are more sustainable? And water usage, pesticide usage, or fertilizer usage, soil management that are more sustainable, right? And we have to bring in these technologies. There is nothing wrong in those kind of. It is Dharma today. We have to do that. Okay, And again, so in that context, somebody will try and be blindfolded by some greedy desire, and then they may cause a new problem. All right. Already you are talking about issues cropping up from genetic engineering and whatnot, for example. All right. So Monsanto, I mean, one word is enough, I suppose. For example, is it dharma to plant a crop whose seed will not lead to another crop? Okay, no matter what other benefits it may confer. Is it or isn't it? It's a question to ask. It's a worthwhile question to ask. Right? So at so many levels we have to look through this thing, and then yes, at some level, the same technology that you installed, automation and whatnot, may end up being can also be used for this for a more sustainable practice, in farming, in production of natural fertilizers, for example, which then are much more sustainable in that sense. So that can be done. Now, back to what you did earlier, and you say you were party to that, and you were part of that act, and therefore there may be some consequences for it, and that you have recognized now. What you are recognizing, that whole thing was very unsustainable, and that is also an action. It also has consequences. So the question is, the whole consequences are there for us to evolve, isn't it? So what is the purpose of that consequence? It is to close the loop so that evolution can take place. So if you have to, learn, you will learn. You're already learning, and you will learn. You will evolve. I hope I'm.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. Yes, yeah. Every choice leads to our evolution in many ways.
Yes. And it is not just individual evolution; it is collective evolution as a humanity as a whole. It is that we tried to look at last session, right? As a society, as humanity, we have come to a brink of, question mark. Will we survive? Will we continue? Right? But at an individual level, if you ask ourselves, there are so many great souls that are not all even realized masters. So many great souls that are doing such great, fantastic work, and they are all evolving in their own way. And this is something that one great saint was saying, and I happened to hear it. There is this 4 yugas that they talk about: Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is supposed to last some 432,000 years or whatever, and it has just been going on for some 4,000, 5,000 years or whatever it is. So we have a very long way to go, right? So then what is the point in trying to change this society and trying to bring truthfulness and dharma and all? Was asked to this Mahatma, and that could be a pertinent question that could be asked in this context also. And what that Mahatma said was that Satya Yuga for the entire society is going to happen whenever it happens, whether it is 432,000 years or some other estimate, or whatever that estimate is, correct, wrong, it doesn't matter. But Satya Yuga can happen for you, for me, inside, within, right? That evolution can and must and has to happen now. That there is no choice in waiting for 432,000 years. Right. So in that sense, we have no choice but to make choices, and we have to evolve. How that conflicts are superimposes on social the external society's choices, it will take its own course. We'll cross that bridge when we come there. In every context, that bridge we are crossing in some way or the other, and even that will feed us to our lessons only, and we will evolve only.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because these dilemmas can often lead to inaction. And then recently Amma was speaking about inaction, I think 2 Tuesdays back, and she gave a funny example that if you fall down from a vehicle or something and you're lying on the road, you just don't lie on the road just because that's a very comfortable position to be in. Just you're lying down, you're relaxed. You'll get up and you'll probably look to save your life so you don't get run over by another vehicle.
Yeah. Okay, on this note, I think it is good to look at some of those practical points, just a couple of slides. I think we can then sort of come to a close. Okay, so one part of it is to try and not objectify yourself as much. Remember the other session, last session was talking so much about how objectification is the way dominion goes. So it's this objectification is a way in which we judge ourselves also. So I have not achieved this, therefore I am such a failure, right? And I have not got this mark, or this I did this wrong, and therefore I'm doomed, right? That itself is objectifying yourself as if something you should be perfect and you didn't measure up to that perfection and therefore you're doomed. It doesn't work that way. So first we have to recognize the human in ourselves, and that the human pushes for evolution, and the manifestation of life itself is an endeavor for growth, for evolution. This is how it is inevitable. I'm telling you, 100%, all of us are going to evolve into liberation at some point or the other. Whether it is 4,32,000 years later, or 43.2 years later, or 4.32 years later, is up to us. But this is inevitable. As a society, it is all going to crumble and break and crush, and then that's how we have to come. That's fine, but the process is inevitable. Therefore, when we can embrace that, then we can respect ourselves for who we are, warts and all. Right? If you can never accept where you are today, how can you ever grow? That itself is a big conflict. However imperfect we are, however hopeless we are, or however great we are, superiority or inferiority doesn't matter. From there is growth. Accept that without any judgment of inferiority or superiority. Then there is respect possible, there is love possible. So from a basis of love and compassion, if we have to act, if we have to express our life and make choices, fundamental requirement is to accept ourselves as we are. All right, and that inability to accept ourselves comes from these harsh judgments. There was this one great Mahatma who I used to live next to at one point, and he used to go like, he used to just close his ears and say, it's so painful to see these people beating themselves up like anything. He was that sensitive. Why do they do this to themselves? They are great. That's how he used to say. All right. So that objectification has to stop. This is one practical point. Second point, keep in mind, on the other hand, you set goals, and there are benchmarks, there are milestones, there are landmarks. That is not going to change. That doesn't mean that in the process of evolution you go from here to here to here to here, or whatever it is. You cannot even transact without benchmarks. I cannot talk to you without expecting that at least you are listening, or at least you are able to follow, or and then I have to calibrate myself. Even here there is a process, isn't it? Therefore, benchmarks can never be removed. On the other hand, the value that you give to these benchmarks, I have to get this, or else I'm, that's it, I'm gone. That can be reduced. Okay, so we can work as hard and as smart as possible for attaining whatever goals we set, but always respect who we are. When we do this, automatically these goals, you will start asking, come on, I'm not being fair to myself if I'm setting this kind of a goal. I'm trying to suppress the other fellow and trying to achieve something. That's not correct, right? So you will be honest with yourself naturally. So change has to happen, evolution has to happen, but that need not be from the pressure of judgment. It can be from a pleasure of acceptance. Then you can relax, first of all. The process can happen much more smoothly, much more peacefully, and in a relaxed manner, of course, with full josh and vigor. All right. So the other point is, then use your intelligence based on this fundamental acceptance. Then use your intelligence and use all the best possible resources. Take help when possible. Act, not react. And this is something that, oh my God, I have to, this can be one whole session. Most of the time we react because it is the conditioning that reacts. The mindset, the predetermined mindsets, our likes and dislikes, our judgments, that are the ones that just push us into a direction, into an action. We hardly even pause to ask ourselves, what are we doing? What is the action that we are doing? But so you act the best way possible, but please do not judge yourself based on the results of the action. It doesn't condemn you. It doesn't elevate you into some pedestal or anything. You are where you are. You have to evolve. Do not try to overreach. Try and control every aspect of how you get the result. Sorry, you can't even do that when you cross a road, as we just discussed. And therefore, you don't get paralyzed and say, "Oh my God, what do I do? I can't do anything. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll not do this. I'll not do that." Let's be very frank. After a while, you cannot stay in inaction for a long time because your desires are too strong. If you don't act outwardly, you will act inwardly. People who are very indecisive, okay, and they're always afraid to act, they will be so harshly judgmental of themselves and they'll be killing themselves with it. Because your desire is not going to let you, it is pushing you to act. So, you have to act. So there is nothing wrong in this. It's a process of evolution. So this is these 4 points. I'm going to, in a sort of a half jest, half funny manner, I'm just going to quote this shloka in Gita, very famous shloka. Karmanyeva adhikaraha te, ma phaleshu kadachana, ma karma phalaheturbuhu, ma te sangostu karmani. So the point is, you have a say over only the action, not on the phala, not on the result of the action. Don't try to be the karma phala hetu. You are not the giver of the phala of the action. You are not the one who gives the consequences of the action. That is determined by the cosmic order. That is not determined by us. And just because of all of this, mate sangos to akarmani, don't become associated with action. Yes. Ganesh?
Yeah, I lost your audio. I'm not sure about others.
How about all of you?
Yeah, I mean, so far it is good. I don't think there was any break. There wasn't any
maybe, yeah, again, it's personal. Maybe it's my internet connection
yeah,
issue.
just please let me know, because a couple of times I really did get disconnected. So practically speaking, therefore, the thing is, we have to act. There is no option in that. And at the same time, to judge ourselves, all right, I am after this result, I didn't get this result, therefore I'm useless, I'm good, I'm great, I'm this, I'm master, I'm slave, whatever, it doesn't make any sense. And don't try to become the karma phala hetu. Okay, so this is a way of almost a half joking way of interpreting this, another practical. And then after that, I just showed you this. Then the last one is, I believe, this last but one slide is this. So this is again another famous Bhajagovindam shlokam. Muda jahihi dhanagama Krishna. Give up this insatiable thirst for wealth and knowledge. Cultivate in your mind the ever refreshing thirst for truth and all the actions that lead you to truth. Kuru sadbuddhim. Right? By performing your innate actions, yal labhase nija karmopatam. Nija karma, nija literally means in some ways truth. So truthful actions, it is what is for you, that's the contextual truth, right? What results and what wealth you get, cultivate your mind to be satisfied with them and use that to propel yourself forward. Really, this is a very practical point that I thought I did. So therefore, if you were to reconfigure Genesis 1:26 instead of dominion. All right. Since humans have the freedom and ability to choose, it behooves us to evolve our emotional, intellectual, and spiritual identities towards realizing the divinity in us. God created man as a mirror, or as a reflection of God, right? And then said that man has dominion over. This is what it is. The same divinity that is reflected in all beings. We just flip the whole thing around and try to realize the divinity between us. So my prayer is that may our choices always be conscious of recognizing, respecting, and enlivening the divinity in all. With that, I think I would like to close my part of the session. Anytime, any questions you have, please feel free.
I think there's one message from Radhika.
Yeah. You will get the phalas of your actions. You definitely will. But only when Ishvara deems right. You just don't have control over the time and the way it comes back to you. Absolutely, yes. So therefore, don't bother trying to become the karma phala hetu. Very nice.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very,
you.
very insightful session.
Thank you. Grace, all God's grace and Guru's grace. That's how it happens.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. And one request to the audience is, yes, there may be discussions on Dharma. It's not possible to cover various aspects in just small sessions. So maybe with your permission, we can take this forward and make it more interactive. We can have more. We thought of a lot of simple topics that concern us modern millennials, if I can say, in various ways. So maybe we can take that forward and have it more like question answer sessions and or discussions instead of talks or presentations. And your feedback is welcome in that. Because even if it's a small audience, it's okay, because after all, it gives us all an opportunity to engage in some satsang, and probably have some takeaways from each of these sessions. So please do message us back. You can message Murli sir, myself, or even Vipin sir, those who are from the FOSS club. Please do give your feedback, because it helps to open up and speak and ask questions, because we as a culture, we were always people who used to question a lot, but somehow that has dwindled now. But please, I request you all, please open up, ask questions, ask as many questions as you can, so that we also can learn. The process is not to become more egoistic or something, but then the process is more to understand ourselves and the world better. Probably on that note, I would like to end today's session.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ganesh, for this wonderful opportunity for discussing, and it's great to see your enthusiastic participation and feedback. Lot of lessons for me also in the process.
Sure, sir. Anyways, I'll be taking this discussion offline as to how should we go forward. Meanwhile, we have another session slated for next Sunday. Also, means we are trying to do something like a session every Sunday morning. Let us see how it goes. Uh, uh, Means I'll share the details about the next session on Sunday. But yeah, please do pour in with your feedback as to how we can have more interactive sessions. Even if it's a small number, it's not necessary that we have to have a big club or something. And there are various options also. If you think newer platforms like Clubhouse are a better platform to do something like that, please do suggest. Or we can use any of these traditional meeting spaces like we are doing right now. On that note, Om Namah Shivaya, thanks everyone for joining in on a Sunday morning. And I suppose it's already getting late for many people who want to go for their lunch. Thanks once again.
Thanks. Shivaya.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Om Namah Shivaya.
Namashvara.
Thank you.
Ganesh, I think can stop recording.